Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War 2.0 video. I am the player who plays as the King Under the Mountain, and I'm currently in season, and this is probably a little bit cheeky, but I'm in the middle of a fight right now, and I just decided I'd make a quick video on equipment and how I sort of went about building the teams that I'm trying to create going forward while I have the opportunity to break down my gear during the equipment event using the Craftsman hammers. And I'm hopefully going to show you how I rebuild those commanders, what kind of things I look for in gear, what I think you should look for in the gear options you have for certain commanders. I will admit this is going to be focused mainly around damage dealers of physical and elemental types, and also behind kind of like a buffing focus formation for a Gandalf the White or a Sauron, as they will play the same role in both of my teams. If you're playing good side, you could switch out the Sauron type sort of role that I'm going to show you with Gandalf the Grey if you have both Gandalfs. And if you haven't got both Gandalfs, you've only got Gandalf the Grey, for example, he does a pretty good job of doing Gandalf the White's job. He just doesn't have White Rider to boost attack of everyone else. You're just getting Mithrandir to boost him through initiative and early combat. So I'm going to try and jump straight in, and I will talk around set effects, and I will talk around the types of team I've tried to build. My ambition for what I'm going to do is to become a non-roleplay player, because I think that's where the game is going to go over a period of time. So I'm trying to, in my head, create two teams that I can create one very good gear set for, and that from that point on I can just kind of change them over without really affecting the ability of my formations to actually deal damage or be competitive. And that's been quite a tricky process. I think I've kind of settled on the two teams now, and I'm going to talk through those because I think they're fairly of meta going forward. I've had to tweak them slightly for this season as I'm in a roleplay season. But we're going to jump straight in. So what I will say is, unfortunately, I do have some items in Dane's Unique and in Gimli's Unique, which I'm a little bit gutted are in there, and I'm hoping the devs do get back to me in time to be able to get those out. Whatever you do, please don't hit the reforge button on your equipment. You will lose half the stuff that is in the helm or whatever it is that you've had built unique-wise, and it's a bit of a disaster. I know people have spoke about that as well, so I'm going to not go into that, but in particular, really annoyingly, Gimli's Unique, I think it's in, I have quite a few obsidian daggers, which I really want the one with Lore of the Arcane to get out of there. But that's a different story. So to jump straight into the teams that I've tried to create. So I'm looking for some kind of support role or mitigation role in both my teams, because it's really important, particularly early on, when you're dealing with damage, as I'm going to be showing. You really need something to help get rid of that early sort of damage to your commanders and to your troops. And that's where a Gandalf the White comes in, for example. Now you can use Gandalf in a build which would allow him to deal damage with the White or with Wizard. For me, his more important role in the army that I'm trying to create is White Council. So with the focus gear that I can create, which is, better than most, I can get to around about 70% damage mitigation for those first 7 hits in this case, because White Council is modified by the focus stat. And this is kind of like a bit of a key lesson in how you want to scale your commanders. And there's a few schools of thought. You can look at your equipment and say, okay, the best equipment I have takes me in the direction of this formation. Or you can look at the commanders that you would like to play and look at what their skills do and how that's going to interact with the gear. I kind of went down the route of, I want to choose the commanders and then I'll pick the gear around them, and I'm fortunate enough that the gear I have kind of makes it palatable. The other skill I was talking about with Gandalf the White was White Rider. It does help him boost damage to formations earlier on, which works really well with damage dealers. You can switch that out, as I said, for Gandalf the Grey, and White Council will be roughly the same. I would probably run Mithrandir, if I'm being brutally honest, rather than Wizard, if I was looking to run Gandalf the Grey. So the 8 commanders I've chosen are Gandalf the White, who will do the same role as Sauron. and that's mainly due to the Deceiver skill. Now, I would just like to make a note of this, that unfortunately, because I'm trying to build a universal gear set for 2 commanders with the highest focus possible, I won't be looking into the speed stat, well, initiative in this case. And I know a lot of people have done some work around that, and it's brilliant because the Deceiver can actually steal buffs and debuffs from enemies if they are faster. So say if you have a Sauron in your formation and you come up against a Gandalf the White, if your Sauron is quicker and he inflicts madness, he will potentially steal the White Council mitigation to your side, as Gandalf cannot sort of work out who's friend and who's foe, making it incredibly powerful as a skill. The other skill that I would use this for is the enemy, and I would look to take down that 15%, so the commanders can't deal as much damage to you, is probably how I would run Sauron in this kind of formation. Just to be aware as well that the Deceiver is actually modified by the commander's focus stat. So we're looking to build a focus support equipment set for those 2 commanders. The plan is to run Witch King and Scalhelm, and I'm going to run Witch King as kind of as nuke. I'm going to run Scalhelm to try and again do focus damage like the Witch King, but more throughout the fight. And I'm going to put one of those in each of the formations. The other key is I am going to use Dane and Bjorn as a physical damage dealer, so one again in each of the formations. And from there, my last choice in this formation is going to be another physical damage dealer, and in one formation I'm going to use Gimli, and in the other I'm probably going to use Dwalin. I may look to run Aragorn King of Men, or even Aragorn Tier 2, because I think, in my opinion, his skill set is a little bit better. If I could tweak it a little bit, I may still run Galadriel, but if I'm trying to run 2 sets of gear to suit specific formations, so it can sort of switch it over, Galadriel unfortunately doesn't make the cut in that. So in each formation I'm going to have 2 damage dealers like Gimli and Dane, and the other one I'm going to have Bjorn and Dwalin, and I'm going to have Gandalf or Sauron, and I'm going to have either Scalhelm or Witch King. So I've got that in my head, and I kind of know how that's going to look. So I will look at this by starting as my main formation, and the main person I'll be looking at is Dane. Now, what you're looking for in damage dealer equipment is anything with the damage stat to be quite high. So as you can see there, this above the line commander damage, and anything that's giving you plus attack. Now, there are some great pieces of equipment for that. So the drums of Barad-dûr are quite good. You can actually get some quite decent damage out of the fine smoking pipe, but again, I wouldn't really recommend that. But really, what you're looking for is a Palantir. Now, I know, because I've already been through my gear, that I cannot make a good physical damage set, unfortunately, using the Palantir. And this is where you've got to use your brain a little bit. So the Palantir is plus 16 attack scaled up to 48, because it's always 3 times the base value of the first statistic. Now, say if I could make a sharp blade set, for example, which gives me plus 20 attack, and I have the drums of Barad-dûr, I would potentially think of running the drums of Barad-dûr, even though the commander damage is a little bit less consistent, shall we say, over the Palantir, because in the end that would be plus 36, plus 20 would give me plus 56 attack during combat with Sharp Blade. It's a little bit of maths, it's not too scary. Get yourself a calculator if you need one, and that's kind of the way that you'd look to do it. Now, I'm presuming everyone knows this about gear, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you refine gear pieces, this stat above the line increases. When you strengthen gear pieces, these stats here increase. And when you complete a whole set, which these are all now 0 or 4, this is where you get the benefit of the set. If you do not complete the set, you will not get the benefit. There is potential that you could probably argue that, say, for a damage dealer, damage mitigation might be a good skill to have. So The ones that you're looking at really for a damage dealer are Sharp Blade for plus 20 attack, Flay for 15% of the target's defense being ignored, Might for physical damage dealt by commander's formation plus 10%. This is, by the way, physical damage dealers that we're talking about here. Warcry, as you are dealing plus 20% extra damage in the first 3 rounds. I will caveat Warcry with the fact that a lot of people run White Council. It kind of negates Warcry. And for certain damage dealers, like a Bjorn for example, I would recommend running a Perseverance, as you get the plus 2% damage each round. From a defensive point of view, because the longer your troops stay alive, generally the longer your damage dealer will stay alive, I'd look at running an evasive action or a divide and conquer. Possibly even a fortitude. I probably wouldn't look at running thick armor, but that's kind of the thought process, if that helps, behind it. So, just going into it, I know full well that the Palantir is going to be my best because I cannot physically make a set with those skills from the equipment I own to create that and make it work in a sort of way that is more effective. For me, there is no point in me running, say, 200 attack with the Sharp Blade skill, that's including that, rather than me running, say, 220 attack without running the Sharp Blade skill. It makes no sense. You've got to look at what maximizes your stats from your gear. So, I know that the best in-slot item here is the Axe of Khazad Doom. The damage range is good, and I also know I can upgrade it because I've got quite a few of them. Some people won't be that fortunate, some people will. The more you can upgrade that damage, the more it helps your physical damage dealer, or even your elemental damage dealer, to be honest, do more attack to the enemy. As for a chest piece, I tend to sway between a few. So the golden skin's actually not bad for a damage dealer as far as it goes. It has got some nice plus attack. The other piece that I quite like is the massive breastplate. Again, not much attack, but there's a little bit of defense in there and a little bit of unit defense, which can actually be quite key. Obviously, the more unit defense you have, the better, because you can actually defend yourself and your troops stay alive longer. And the piece of gear which is currently failing me is the Berserker's Raiment, which, if you're after the most plus attack for your gear, that is the chest piece for you. The other piece I would recommend, and I actually think I really enjoy using, and I can upgrade it a lot more, so I will be putting this on Dane, is the Warborn Battle Plate. And even though you only get 12 attack, because of the amount of attack I've already got from everything else, I'm quite happy to scale Commander Defense, which should keep him alive a little bit longer. And I know from what I have, refine it so I can get more HP. It also has a better base HP than quite a few of the chest pieces. For example, the Berserker's Raiment. So that's where I'd go with that. Then, as a best in slot piece for headgear for a commander damage dealer, particularly a physical one, Berserker's Gaze is okay. I wouldn't be looking to use that. Chieftain's Gaze is also alright. I wouldn't probably be looking to use that at this point. Really, purple options like the Full Helm are actually arguably probably a little bit better for a damage dealer. But the one I will be looking to use is this one here, and I'll pick any of them because I can't make a set. I'll probably go for that one actually, because in case I end up pulling some more might pieces that I can then make a set out of with might to go alongside the Berserker's Raiment. So that's my base for that. Now, that is a messy set, I grant you, but that is the best in slot pieces that I can create, and I do feel that's more important than a set at this stage. I then go to my second damage dealer and look at his formation. Now, beyond long term, I'm going to hopefully make a Perseverance set. So again, I'm throwing in the Axe of Khazad Doom. Here I'll throw in the Berserker's Raiment because that extra bit of plus attack for Bjorn, a little bit more damage, particularly when his R1 skill scales off attack, Skin Changer, so plus 15 until the end of the fight. The more attack the better from round 4. I went into that with a video the other day, so if you get a chance, check that out, that'd be quite good. Helmet wise, again, I'm lucky I've got quite a few of these, and because I'm looking to make this long term, I'll put a perseverance in there. And again, I'm looking at running my second Palantir. As for Gandalf the White, now this is that support focus build that I was talking about, which would be either Sauron or Gandalf. Now both can use a Morgul Blade, for example, which is what I will be using. And I'll probably use it as Lore of the Arcane. I think as far as elemental sort of support roles go, I would be looking for something that keeps him alive the longest. You're not asking him to kick out masses of focus damage, which is a different thing that we'll come on to with the focus damage dealer shortly. So I'm looking at the likes of thick armour, fortitude, evasive action, divide and conquer. Those are the things I'm looking for, so I can try and keep this army alive the longest. There is a bit of a tank and to support the troops. I will be looking at equipping the Morgul Blade. I would like, as I said earlier, to equip an Obsidian Dagger, but unfortunately the Obsidian Dagger that I want is currently tied up in a unique, which I'm hoping the devs will actually get around to unlocking for me. Now remember, on this build, again, I'd love to be able to make a full set of those things, but I know I can't to maximise the focus that I want and make it efficient here. So I'm looking for the pieces with the most focus. And in this case, the piece with the most focus is the protection of Numenor. So we'll go for on a protection of Numenor. Long term, again, hopefully if I can make some kind of perseverance focus damage set, Scalhelm will scale brilliantly off this. Does a lot of damage late on in the fight. So again, just looking into the future, I haven't got the perfect pieces now, but I'm looking to develop them. Then I'm looking at the piece with the best focus for a headpiece, and I'm looking at the Grey Wizard's hat. Now, other options for a headpiece that are okay and not great for focus, but you're looking at your Swan Helm, ideally as a secondary option. Remember, these are very specific. To be perfectly honest, I will run, partly because of the way my gear works, I will be running the Bone Mask in the damage dealing formation as well. Now, these pieces could be interchangeable over a period of time, but for now I'm just looking to maximise the focus. Other options, by the way, for the Morgul Blade, apart from the Obsidian Dagger, from memory, the Noldor Sword is also not bad, because if you're looking at running a Galadriel, she can't actually use the Morgul Blade, but she can use the Obsidian Dagger now, which is one of the problems with uniques. People didn't think people could use certain things, and then it turns out that they can. So, as for armour, the Elven Cloak isn't too bad for focus. I will be running this piece on Galadriel, but if you've got it, it's also quite good for a focus person. Then we are looking at a piece or accessory in this case, which it doesn't have to boost the damage of the commander, because you're not looking for them to cause damage. That's just a side effect, which is quite good. So you're looking for the most amount of focus again, and the piece with the most amount of focus is the Fine Smoking Pipe. Again, I'll choose it with Lore of the Arcane because all else fails, it's something that will help. Other pieces which are quite handy for focus, particularly if you're looking for a focus damage dealer, or even a focus support, are the Signet of the Barrows, and from memory, looking down here, I don't think there's many more that are actually alright for that. You get a little bit of focus from Northrunk Delivery. Arguably, if you're using Witch King as a troop support, this would probably be a good idea. The other thing as well to help you tank, I suppose, is another School of Thought, but I am looking at purely just boosting the focus early rounds, not necessarily to keep my troops alive on this commander, but to boost things like White Council and Sauron's R1. I'm looking more for the focus stat than command. Now, command is a different thing. Command is a very, very important stat in this game, and it does help you because it increases the damage dealt by the commander's formation and reduces the damage received. So there is a school of thought that you need also a lot of command, particularly on troop buff combinations, but also on this kind of formation if you're trying to use someone as a tank. I'm just trying to nuke people early with this damage formation, and this is why I'm kind of going the way I have. Oh, feel free to comment if you think I'm doing that wrong. So that would be where I'd look at for that. So we've got Bjorn. Now at the moment I'm using Galadriel as the secondary person, but in this case, as I can't put equipment on anyone else, I'll continue to use her. Now this will probably be, I would think, my Witch King equipment, as opposed to Scalhelm for now. So let's go down and have a look. Now, what you're looking for in this is you're looking for damage. This is your elemental damage dealer. Again, the obvious choice is the Obsidian Dagger, which I do not have. The Noldor Sword gives command, not damage. So remember, the only two pieces that give damage, which is that stat that you're looking for to really, really increase the amount of attack you have against the enemy. The only two pieces of equipment that have that are either a sort of sword or hand item or an accessory. So in my opinion, if you're trying to use a damage dealer, you need to maximise those pieces. So for that reason, I would rule out the Noldor Sword, even though the focus is quite good. So I'm looking at a Blazing Tongue as a secondary option. One, because I know I've got a lot of them. And two, because there isn't really a lot of other focus items which are quite handy. Now remember, I'm trying to build something here which hopefully has a skill set. In this case, it will be Law of the Arcane. Now, if you're looking at running a focus damage dealer, for example, I would be looking down the skills, which aren't things like Sharp Blade, as there's no point in boosting attack because it doesn't boost your focus damage. I'm looking for things like Law of the Arcane, and I'm looking for things like Perseverance, so I get that extra damage each round. Those are the two sort of sets I'm looking to increase. In this case, I'm looking for Law of the Arcane because I think it's probably the best one that I can do. So I'm scrolling through my gear, and remember, I know my gear quite well, so I've done this a few times. The filter option is really good if you're looking to create a set. In this case, I'm looking to create Law of the Arcane, and it just brings up all those pieces that are Law of the Arcane. I'm looking for a lot of focus, and I'm looking to hopefully create a set here. So I'm going to go for the Great Plate of the East. Next, I'm looking at, this is my other options here. So I could run a Wizard Tat, which would give me more focus. But again, this is where you've got to kind of be a little bit canny with it. So if I create the whole set, I get 10% extra damage. But from the Wizard Tat against the Bone Mask, you're talking, what's that, 18 from the Bone Mask. And the Wizard Hat would scale up to 56. So I'm looking at playing off either 38 focus against 10% extra damage. Now in this case, I'm going to choose the 10% extra damage. You could argue that the focus would actually buff more, but I'm choosing that extra damage. One, because I can only build 3 head pieces, and I feel my 2 physical damage dealers are going to be the ones that do the most work in the fight. So I'm choosing this mainly because, as well, the Call of the Forest, if I was going to make this up, only comes to plus 18 focus anyway. It gives me a little bit of unit attack, a little bit of unit defense, but I'm looking to cause that damage. Again, we're looking at a Fine Smoking Pipe. It's the best in slot for focus commanders, particularly even damage dealers. You could argue, if I just reset this, you could use something like a Palantir, but again, you're boosting attack, not necessarily commander focus, but you are getting damage. There isn't really many options apart from the Signet of the Barrows, which Galadriel can't use, which is why it's not come up for focus damage dealers. So we're going again into that Fine Smoking Pipe. So we've created that collector set, and we've created our 4 base gear sets. Now what we're going to do from there is we're going to look to strengthen these gear pieces, and we're going to look to strengthen them in a particular way. I know this axe from Dane I'm probably never going to break down because it's his best in slot. I also know I'm personally never going to probably run troop boosting comms, so things like the White Knife are literally not important to me. But something like a Noldor sword, potentially somewhere down the line, may be important to me. Or what other items might be important to me? Something like a black mace might be important to me if I try and run Witch King in a different way. Hammer and Mori is not likely to be important to me. So in this gear piece that I'm hoping to never probably break down, I'm looking to get rid of gear pieces in here that I'm never going to use. So it's these troop boosting pieces. And it's really frustrating actually, because I could actually build a really good troop boosting com. And I'm going to upgrade this because this is my main sort of set of gear. So I'm going to fully upgrade with all these pieces. Now what I would say is, from a crafting point of view, and I did think about this the other day and I felt it was worth mentioning, if there are pieces that you think you may want to use one day, I would build them all into one specific piece. Because if you build them all into one specific piece, it's only one hammer to break them down. And from there, you know, you can sort of just use the one hammer, get the pieces that you want out of it, rebuild whatever you want. If you put it into multiple pieces, you've got to use multiple hammers to bring it down, and that can take a few seasons to get it on. It's alright at the moment when we've all got all these hammers, but realistically, long term, I think that's the only way you can do it. So we're piecing these back together. Again, this piece is probably never going to get broken down. The only way it may get broken down is if we end up refining it into something else. Same with this chest piece. So I'm looking at using worn outs to start with. Might help if I put two pieces in there. I'm not likely to want to use an elven cloak anytime soon because I've already got what I consider the best focus gear in slot. It may not have the right skill, but I've got those pieces, so I'm not too fussed. Mithril coat's actually quite terrible in 2.0, I've found. I'm just going to keep building them up like that. Now I probably will want to keep those golden skins, so I'm not going to put them into this piece. I'm going to put them into a different piece on their own. So all this sort of troop boosting gear that I've got, like the Durin's plate, I'm not likely to use. I'm putting it all in here, and I'm just using it as basically food to upgrade these pieces. I'm going to do the same with the helmet. And if there's pieces that I own that I might want to refine, say, you know, if it's a toss-up between strengthening and refining, in most cases I would advise strengthening fully the gear that you've got. But I might want to refine the Grey Wizard's hat, so I'm not going to use those pieces to strengthen until I have to. So just again, popping down here. This is a very long, painful process, particularly when you know roughly what pieces you want and don't want. I'll just scroll through one commander's worth of a set and I'll build the rest offline. Hopefully quite quickly as well before I end up back in the fight. Nice, that's a nice piece of equipment. Now, this is literally just for focus damage dealers, this build that I'm creating and this gear I'm creating, and also for physical damage dealers with the support role of a White Council or something like that. Now again, I'm not going to put the smoking pipes in here because I might want to refine it. Bear in mind I'm using two of them. I wouldn't advise running this gear on troop boosting, and like I tried to say earlier on, you know, you've got to look at what skills your commanders have and then look at how you maximise those skills against the equipment that you've got. Now I'm quite fortunate here, this is a lot of gold equipment that I'm then running. I do get to run pretty much a full gold formation, which I know won't be the same for everyone. And that's where I think some of the purple items come in, and they are quite good. So if I was running, say, a full purple set on a commander damage build, which again, I'll probably do a separate video on purple gear at some stage. If I was running a full purple set, I'd run something like a sharp blade as more of a necessity, because the extra 20 attack is actually quite a big increase on what you can achieve altogether. So I'm going to go through now and build all these and refine where I can. Just a little thing that people may not know about, I don't have another Palantir, but you can now refine right the way up without actually strengthening equipment, which is quite handy. If I just find something that I know I can refine, so I could refine this smoking pipe right the way up if I want to. But on that's pretty much all I've got to say about it, really. So I hope that's given a insight into gear and an insight into how I build a formation in this sort of physical damage and elemental damage. At the moment in this season, I'm running Galadriel for elemental damage, but long term I won't be doing that. She is very viable as an option, but it's just I've kind of wanted to play non-role play for a little while, so I'm going to go and do that next season, and that's going to be how I think the game moves forward anyway. I'll just add a little still at the end of sort of how the gear looked at the end once I've sort of strengthened and refined it, to save you having to sit through all that. With this gear stuff, more importantly than most, just check out your commanders, check out the skills they have, maximise the things that those commanders need, and if in doubt, always follow your nose.